All right, episode 4, Big Conversations in a Little Campervan. Today I'm joined by Ray Milidoni from Victoria, Australia?
Correct, that's it.
Victoria, Australia. Ray Milidoni, and Ray's from Farming Secrets over there in Australia. And Ray, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for us, please?
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks very much for having me on the show today. Very excited about sharing our knowledge and what we've been up to here at Farming Secrets. So my background over the years comes from marketing and digital and web and everything got to do with online. And when I met Helen and Hugo from Farming Secrets and seeing the online business that they were setting up, overlapping with my interest of slowing down and simpler living and really understanding where our food came from and food security, it was almost a bit of one of those life-changing moments and aha moments of going, we need to do more work together. And in the start, it was very much about being affiliate for them and just helping spread the word. And as we started working more and more together, we realized that there are a lot of things that we thought on the same page, and we just realized that there was a lot of synergy together. And to have a really big impact, my online marketing and passion for impact and their years and years of experts and knowledge and capturing of videos and summits and field days made a really good kind of partnership. So years later, we're now partnering together formally to bring Farming Secrets into the next generation. And that's what really excites me, is that we've now got a bit of a succession plan for Farming Secrets. And I am that person who's able to bring the business into the new generation, but with decades of knowledge and expertise and wisdom. And so that's a little bit about myself and Farming Secrets without going into all the finer details.
Yeah, I like it, Ray. It sounds to me like a beautiful synergy. You've got the experience, and then you've got this new perspective and this new energy. Tell me what it's been like for you so far, from just sort of dipping your toes into now obviously being heavily involved with the company. How's that been for you, Ray?
Yeah, it's been really, really good. I just really, I guess a lot of times wish there was more hours in the day to amplify the impact that we've got. I remember in the early days going to HQ, which is where Farming Secrets run their business. It's at home in the patch in Victoria, in the Dandenong Ranges, and it's just a beautiful drive out there. And once you get there, you're presented with Helen and Hugo's 4-acre property, green trees and greenery, and it's just a beautiful place to work. But what is really impressive is the amount of years of video recording that they've got on bookshelves. And every time we would flick through this material and Helen would explain, this was captured 3 years ago and it was at this field day, but unfortunately we never released it. And I was like, what? We've never released it? And just time and resources were always really, tight. And so I just look at so much content that we've got sitting in boxes and bookshelves and even on the cloud now with digital, and people haven't even seen it yet. So I'm really excited to be, being able to really catch up on some of the projects that have taken a few years to get off the ground, and really start releasing some of this, I call it legacy, of these experts that has never seen the light of day. And unfortunately, some of the experts are no longer with us due to health reasons or, passing away. And we have their legacy caught up in a program or a training seminar, or a workshop that they ran. And I can't wait to get that out into the universe, so that way we can all benefit from that. And that's kind of, why we've been working on our back end of the system, so that way we can get ready to host more courses and host more learning material in our back end that has a really good user experience for people who engage with the content.
Wow. And how timely, right now when people are sort of, this is really what we've got, isn't it? This sort of virtual, this sort of online connection thing, and with your background and experience and marketing and mobile marketing and data and technology, and more so the technology and communication side of things. So what, with that fresh perspective, you've talked about the shelves of DVDs and the work that's going to be involved, and just shifting that over to a different format. So and you guys are talking about doing some workshops and things. Tell me about, you know, what's there in the pipeline, you know, closest to our end, the consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. Digital is definitely the place to go. That's what I love about seeing what Helen and Hugo have built over the last 10 years. Is not only was I always impressed by the content that they've captured, but just the way they got it distributed. You know, they got information to farmers when internet wasn't a big thing. They were basically like the original Netflix, which was a physical DVD subscription service, and you would send a DVD and then you'd send it back. Helen and Hugo had the bright idea and the smarts to realize that farmers needed this content, but they couldn't fly to Australia or to New Zealand and get physically in the room. So they went there with a camera, captured it from the corner. Admittedly, sometimes the quality isn't great, but the knowledge and the information there is on point. And then they would burn that onto a DVD and send it to farmers all around the world, which just is an amazing process in itself. Now we incorporate digital, and we have the ability to convert all that physical content into digital instant download or on demand. And so again, like the new Netflix, but for regen farmers and this, growers and farming space. And that's, the next, I guess, project is digitalizing as much as we can, but also making it easy for people to find the solution to their problems. And I sometimes explain it like a little bit of a library. You want to go to the desk and say, I need help with this. And then the librarian, us being Farming Secrets, and Helen actually was a librarian, so it's a bit interesting that this is how the business is set up, points you in the right direction and says, you need to watch this DVD or digital download nowadays. So their knowledge and wisdom is so great that they really don't have a problem that they can't solve, and lay it on to bringing that into digital. And now being able to have a consultation via Zoom, you can literally load it on your phone and walk around with a student on their paddocks and diagnose things or workshop things virtually anywhere around the world. And I know you do a little bit about that as well. And, being physical is one element, but sometimes remote. And now we're being forced to, with the crisis, kind of embrace this technology. And so people are becoming more and more open to the idea to learning abroad and remote and collaborating in groups online rather than in workspaces and workshops.
Yeah. So Ray, you talk about Hugh and Helen, years and years and years of video content, of knowledge, and you mentioned earlier about successions and that there's something sort of in place. What is the moving forward, because we are learning so much so often here, and aside from catching up on the the stuff that's there in backlog, what does the forward movement look like with Hugh and Helen, possibly taking a step backwards, and also on that, Farming Secrets, the library that it sounds like it's going to become, is that a possibility of dragging in different fields of expertise as well and different perspectives?
Yeah. So knowing Helen and Hugo, to answer your question, there is no stepping or slowing down. They are very hungry to make impact and change. And when you meet them, and a lot of people have, I've met people who refer to Helen and Hugo as their idols or superheroes, because they have stuck in this industry when it wasn't the norm. It wasn't at the tipping point that we have now. They had a lot of people pigeonhole them into a box to say that you're doing woo-woo stuff and that's never going to work, and we need to keep putting inputs, and inputs equals yields, and this scientific research and this scientific research. And now the tables have turned and people are questioning the system and are realizing that the information, it doesn't matter what's being said, it's who's saying it and who's funding the research and all these underlying agendas. And so we live in the information age where we can Google something and maybe that changes the way that we think. And it doesn't necessarily mean it might be right, but it's that pattern interrupt that creates that curiosity of going, let me just find more information about this, and then I will decide what I would like to be my new belief system. And so they stuck through all this for the last 12 to 13 years as Farming Secrets. And they also, their story is that they were farm supply stores. So they were from a space where you would go into the shop and you would say, I need this problem solved, and the solution would be an input.
Yeah.
And that was the best to their knowledge. And then one day they questioned that and then led them down this path. And now, decade later, we're at this point where regenerative farming is almost the new organic buzzword, and people are embracing and want to identify with that. So they are fired up more than ever to get this information out far and wide. What's different, and with the use of technology and with my fresh approach, I guess, into the business, is that we can do this at scale to have the biggest amount of impact with less effort, because we can run virtual summits, we can bring people into virtual classrooms, and we can connect experts all around the world in this community. And there's some of the words that we're really focusing on this year, is how to collaborate with community to really increase and amplify this movement and this impact. And it all comes to the underlying understanding of just really knowing our soils, the ground beneath our feet. And once we realize that the soil health is transferred into the plant health, and then that is transferred into the product and the produce that we eat, and then that turns into our gut health. And then there's a lot of research now between our gut health and our mental health. It's kind of this full picture of understanding what's kind of been missing over the last few decades, because this industrial revolution and the way that we purchase food is a fairly new concept in the human lifespan, of how we've always kind of hunted and gathered our food. My grandparents, and I share this in a lot of the stories, still grow a lot of their food from home. There is no grass in my grandparents' veggie, in their backyard. It's all veggie plots, and everything has a spot and a reason and a season to grow certain food. And we make salami and tomato sauce and wine. And my grandfather's 90 and he still does this. It's his reason to wake up every morning. And so we've lost that understanding and that connection to our food supply and that chain. And we're now being tested. We can't leave our homes. How do we fix this? Or how do we manage through this? And there are seed shortages. There are seedlings shortages. There are, people setting up garden beds however they can with their kids at home. And it's really inspiring to see. We just hope that it continues after this forced kind of thinking, and that people realize that this could be a new way, what we call, life beyond 2020.
Yeah. And I love hearing that it's not just my grandparents that are out there growing their own vegetables, because, man, it's interesting. And I'll touch on this quickly, Ray. My grandparents, so my grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side, they've been in the same place for about 40 years. And it's a 1/4 acre section in Oamaru in New Zealand. And I've got out the back is like all raised gardens, all like, all these pathways to different areas. There's an area where it's all ornamentals, and it's also all of our deceased pets are buried there. So it's sort of like this own little area. But then the rest of it's just vegetables, and they have vegetable production down pat. Like my grandmother, she grows enough spuds for everyone in the family almost, and she knows exactly how to store them, and she's really good at what she does. And why I talk about this, because when I started learning about the power of diversity and soil health, and I started observing the way that my grandmother was, preparing seed bed, and I just sort of started to talk to her about what I had learned, and she was sort of like, wow, like she used to do things like grow mustard as like a biofumigant to de-sterilize the soil, was her words, and keep it clean, and then she'd cover with newspaper to keep the soil covered and moist, was the reasoning behind it. And then I come along and said, well, how about instead of that, we plant a diverse species cover crop? And we went ahead and did that. And she said that her potato yields that year, after 40 years of doing it, were the best she's ever had. And it was just something that, here I was thinking she had this thing down packed, and she, to her knowledge, she did. And she did really well with what she produced. And then what was missing was this, in between the crops, how do we look after the soil? And she said just in that first year, she said it was like, massive increases in production and for her spuds just by introducing a cover crop. And so she, at the age of, 79 years old, was like a little kid in the playground out there. She's dusting her seed on, she's raking it in. It was so cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have the similar conversations with my dad and his, dad, which is my grandfather, because, they're very used to turning soil and letting it rest and it being bare. And, I'm, trying to explain to them that, less disturbance is better. And, you want to have it, armored and covered, even in rest seasons. And, just that, they tend to be creatures of habit, and they grow the tomatoes in the same spot every year because that's just, where the sticks fit perfectly spaced out. And, but now we're trying to break that pattern and say tomatoes here this season, there next season, beans over here now, and chop and drop, and just, changing their way of doing some small things and having those same moments of like, oh, wow, like it's less work and I get more yield. And we're like, this is exactly what we try and teach farmers and, larger ag organizations. And so like I love when growers and home gardeners are starting to think like this, because I'm really a big believer of it goes, not only do we have a top-down approach where we can try and have the education for farmers and pivot their way of thinking from there, but it's also a bottom-up approach. The whole organic movement happened because more and more people started educating themselves and going into shops and setting up organics, and then the big supermarkets purchased competitors, so they had their own owned organic range. And I think a bottom-up approach for something like this is also really, really good, and a great way to put pressure on the system to say that we do need change. And I don't think, I'm not in any position to comment on labeling and certification and things like that. And I think sometimes that's what ruins a system, but I think it's just self-education of going, a new terminology that's kind of come up for me is, dollar for nutrition. So instead of just buying apples because they're cheaper, we now can start thinking of maybe putting measures in place and saying, well, this apple might be cheaper, but its nutrition score is 3. This apple has a nutrition score of 6 and it's $1 more. So from $1 per nutrition value, this is the apple I want to buy, because I can actually buy less actual apples and get a better nutrient dense food quality experience. And so I think it comes back to the whole quality over quantity. I think people are going to start wanting quality food rather than quantity food. And so we then eat less because we're more nourished and more satisfied. And so we spend less in the long run once we, make this change of the way we shop and think and consume.
Yeah. And also I think too, just from what I'm hearing out there in the communities that I'm in, is that people are also hungry for food. Excuse me. Hungry for food. People are interested in food that has a story. So food that has a background. People do want to know what's going on beyond the farm gate. And it's interesting because the way that we've produced food thus far is like, it's not uncommon to correlate for instance, a spray rig with food. It's like, we, as a kid, like, yeah, look at that spray truck, like, wow. And I was a kid that used to draw spray trucks like that was just the coolest thing. But it's like we forget, hang on a minute, that's our food we're doing that to. And actually going back to my grandmother's, this is all just coming to me now, her garden shed you weren't allowed in, because there's literally a whole cabinet full of, slug bait, chlorpyrifos, insecticides, superphosphates. Everything was there, for her food production. I'm just thinking about it now and thinking about the smell, because it used to stink in there, and actually not thinking there was anything wrong with that. That was just normal. And I think that's been that way for society for so long. And now people are waking up. People are interested in how their food's produced, and people want to know what's going on. So although we don't have something just yet, although I'm sort of involved in the creation of something like a standard, but a standard that isn't linear like organics, and then offering that to the people with the opportunity to then also tell a bit of a story about the way in which this food is produced and having it made available to the consumer. And I think people will pay for that when they realize the impact that it can have on, your human health. And look at the medical bills of most countries being right up there amongst the top 3, expenditures in most countries. Well, what if we just take some of that away and put it towards our food?
Yeah, 100%. And you say it in such a beautiful way as well. And it sometimes seems so simple and so logical, but there are just kind of roadblocks and red tape. And that's, we live in a society now where there are so many red tapes and obstacles that you need to overcome. and you know, and as you explain that as well with the whole story, like people want to go to restaurants now and know that what they're consuming is from a local garden or a local grower, and that it's traveled very little kilometers to get there onto the plate, and that whole paddock to plate experience. I look at companies like Thank You Water who have QR codes on all their bottles, and you can scan that QR code and know the impact that that particular bottle of water is having. I see the same with food across all verticals, where you know, you would be able to scan a code and know that this apple was grown in this particular location and its soil health is at this level. Because with big data and the internet, there is now the possibility where you will be able to make conscious decisions on the fly by scanning a little simple QR code and saying, well, this apple's grown in this place. That's nostalgic to me because that's where I grew up. So I want to support a local community. But this apple is grown overseas, but the soil health is much better. So today I want to prioritize the soil health movement. And we can make, you know, on the fly decisions. I know that's very big visionary, but it's very possible with all the technology that we have today. And so we just need the smarts of people collaborating and bringing that data together. You know, laboratories need to put that data somewhere so it's all aggregated and we can say, look, this is grown at these location and this is the average soil health in that area. And I know of people also working on projects like that, and that's why it excites me to be in this industry, because, you know, with this level of technology and this innovation, and, you know, I come from a tech startup background, so I love anything that's kind of lean, quick, fast, and, you know, just published out to market so we can get validation. Early day validation of some of these tests are showing that this is what people want. Like what you've just said, people want that story. They want to know the grower. You can get a photo of them, know their story, know why they started farming, you know, and small scale farming as well is becoming a huge trend now. People don't want hundreds of thousands of acres, and families don't want to take over that kind of responsibility. But, you know, 10 acres can be very productive these days with the right approach. And so people can start their own small scale farm and really tap into that food supply network.
100%, man. And like, just thinking about it now, you know, for instance, getting my kids to eat vegetables, you know, and you'll think about a QR, is it QR code? What is that? What
Yeah,
it is?
a little QR code or a little, you know, I've actually got a Thank You hand sanitizer now, and at the back there's a little code for people who don't have the video representation, but there's a little code. You go to the website, type in that code, and it tells you what impact you're having with that bottle. You know, I didn't even know this was here. It just caught my eye as I was explaining it. So that's,
but imagine that
exactly
on food, man. Like, imagine if you could go into a supermarket with your phone, scan something, because, you know, I'm hoping you can relate. You've grown a vegetable, you get out there, you take it, you've got it inside. It's like this little child, you know, you're like, oh man, I've made this thing, I'm gonna eat it.
Yep.
And it's a real process. And when I'm out there with my kids in our veggie garden, for them, they'll eat that stuff because they've grown it. Whereas other times it's like near impossible. I've tried bribery, I've tried everything to get the kids to eat vegetables, but they won't eat them. But if they feel like they're part of the, you know, they got to plant the seeds, they get to spend the time with me looking after their stuff, and they eat them, it's a real process for them. And for me, you know, even now at the age of 31, if I've grown something and I'm eating it, it's like, oh, it's like something, you know, like it's beyond, you know, it's nutritious. Well, certainly the way in which I produce food, I know it's nutritious, but there's something else there. And if people can come along and scan a product and see a bit of history behind it, it'd almost replicate that, you know, like it'd be an experience all of a sudden. Like food really is an experience, and I've sort of treated it like like a farmer treats their commodity crops, and that's almost how we treat food now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many layers that you can put on that, like buying into people's farms. You know, websites like Kickstarter or what they call crowdfunding gives people the ability to back a project before the project even has, you know, the tooling or the market plan, or they don't even know if this is going to work, but they can test to see whether people want to buy it. With this whole, you know, donating on Facebook and contributing to particular movements, people are used to giving small amounts of money and buying in before their reward. And so this could also happen with farmers. In America, more so, there is community supported agriculture, or CSAs, where you can buy into a farmer's produce before they even produce it. So the farmer knows in advance that they're going to get X amount of customers at the end of the season, and they can grow to scale and say, well, we need 200 tons of X to supply all the people who have already given us the money. So it flips the model on give the money first, then seek the reward. That's not so big in Australia. It's starting to get a little bit of traction, but when we can start supporting the farmer at that level and scanning a QR code and hearing their story and understanding why they're farming and building a relationship and having the kids involved and the whole family, and then realizing, oh, hang on, I can now buy this produce directly from the farm gate or the farmer, and I can buy in to their share. And people are doing it with even the meat industry, where you can buy a share of meat when before it's even ready for sale. So farmers are getting income during the season when they wouldn't normally make money until the end, so it's just changing the way that we do business and helping farmers with cash flow, so they don't have to hit the emergency button and give lower grade grain. They can give green fresh grass for their cattle, so it is grass fed at the end of the day, and there's no emergency button because banks are knocking, the cash is tight. So I feel like, we're definitely in a society now where this is more embraced, and we'll see more and more of these programs and people paying before they receive.
So it sounds to me like, I'm reminded of Joel Salatin and what he's up to over there. And there's obviously shifts, on the horizon for, the way in which we farm, but also around economics and how we treat certain, values of certain things. I feel like there's a big shift taking place, and perhaps foods, about to be in the spotlight for becoming the, the high value, thing that it really is. And so how do we take, because it is, although we know it's growing from a percentage of very low people being aware about what, food quality and the way in which food's produced has a wider effect. That percentage of people aware of that's always been really low. And so although things are improving, they're improving from a place of being very poor to being sort of, we're getting some movement, how do we get it from here to normal, to majority?
If I had the solution, I would be executing it right now. But I think it's persistence, it's patience, it's breaking down that instant gratification type of mentality. It is. There's a couple of things, like people need to realize that maybe tomatoes aren't available all the time, and that carrots aren't just there when you need them. So it is really kind of going back to basics, and knowing, having that relationship with the earth and the food and the cycles of the seasons, and knowing that certain things are available, learning how to preserve foods, going back to those kind of back to basics to really realize that we don't live in an on-demand society with everything. And if we do, there's a reason for it. And that means that something is taking a toll on it, whether it be quality, whether it be, price, so we pay more when something's out of season for a reason. And when it's in season, the price drops. It's the whole supply versus demand. But if we're growing ourselves and we know that certain things are going to be available, we know to plan our meals and our, seasonal eating around that as well. But even just going to basics of like understanding how to cook and how to process food is another element that needs to be kind of taught and learned. People don't really know how to, you can buy everything cut and ready. You just put in the oven and there's your roast, all your potatoes are peeled and washed, your carrots are cut and sliced. And, there is that kind of just back to basics of learning. But I feel like it is patience and persistent. I don't think there is a quick fix. I think, unfortunately, episodes like the coronavirus can speed questioning the system up. Realizing that, even farmers markets, they're still considered as an essential service. There's a reason for that. Farmers are still working harder than ever. there are farm gate programs that are selling out their boxes or their season food. They never had that problem before. They were battling against the supermarkets and the big chains. Now they're selling out, and there's a shortage of food. I feel like, you know, unfortunately, health crises like this help speed up that questioning of the system and realizing that there is a different way, and that, you know, the time really is now to bring that education back to ourselves and the power to each individual, and say, if this happens again, am I now prepared? People are learning. You know, I've got so many friends on Instagram that all of a sudden are baking sourdough bread and learning how to, you know, bake their own bread. That's something that they would never have done if this didn't happen, you know. And I just hope that this kind of trend carries on. The permaculture movement is going crazy at the moment. Everyone is wanting to learn about permaculture. You know, I've heard reports, I can't validate whether it's true, but in America, they're putting bans on selling seeds and seedlings because people are congregating to try and buy them. And they're not seeing that as essential, you know, and you just question, like, why is that happening? Why are they stopping people from growing food? You know, seed companies here in Australia are struggling to fulfill orders because they've just got an abundance of orders all of a sudden, which is a great outcome, but it didn't really need to take something like this to wake people up. But this is what's happening. This is the current climate that we have at the moment, you know.
And I think also, Ray, like, you know, things are seasonal and it'd be cool to shop to that. But do you think also, like, what was just there for me is, you know, we might build, you know, there's nothing like something being taken away from you to appreciate it. For instance, right now, our freedom, you know, never will I, you know, take for granted walking down the street, you know. And if we can treat our food a bit the same, you know, like, for instance, working seasonally with what's available, you know, I think maybe that might just bring on a whole new appreciation for those foods, and we won't take them for granted like what we're currently doing. And it's really interesting you talk about what this stuff does and the things that we used to, you know. I see, actually just yesterday I seen, it was actually my mum bought this thing that the supermarkets are doing where it's everything in the bag, everything that you need, but you know, some of the stuff might be from the other side of the world. It's like, you know, it didn't feel like that meal that you cooked from out the garden. You know, it just doesn't have that feel. And so where was I going with that? I've split into two different tangents. There's one is you know, appreciating the things, and maybe this moment is the time to appreciate our food for the amazing you know, things that it is, and also about shifting people's relationship to you know, going back to basics, to preparing food again. And you know, I can only speak for myself at the moment. I tried to do my own sauerkraut. So I've tried sauerkraut, and my mum's just alarmed me earlier today that one of them is growing mold. So I haven't succeeded, but you know, having a play all the time.
But this is exactly, you make a very good point. You've attempted it. You've tried. That's more than not doing anything. So some action is better, because, you know, imagine never walking because you tried the first time and failed, and going, oh, well, I just can't walk. You know, you have to try. And like, I know there is that saying, like, there's do or don't, there's no try, which is very, very valid. But without failure, we can't learn and evolve. And it's that proactiveness of giving it a go. One of my friends attempted sourdough and it didn't really work out the same way, but that attemption and the fact that she shared it on all her Instagram stories inspired other people. You know, she gave her sourdough starter a name, and everyone was so interested to know how Barry the starter was going. And so, like, that she doesn't realize how much impact she's had by doing something like that. You know, you trying your sauerkraut, even though it didn't work, that's a win in my world. It's like, go you for trying and giving it a go, because from that failure you will learn. And then in 3 years' time, you might be making the best sauerkraut in the world that's sought after from all walks of life, you know. And that only comes from giving it a go. And that's what these moments like this will have, is that people will convert their flower gardens into growing vegetables, and see that can be very rewarding. And so, you know, thumbs up to your sauerkraut and the mold.
Hey man, I'm going to eat it still. I'm still going to eat it.
Well, that's exactly right. My grandparents would do the same. You cut it off and you eat the rest, you know.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, and
So,
you know, and yeah, that's right. You know, and I think we're lucky that we're in isolation. We have access to internet. You know, my grandparents and probably even yours, you know, war and that, there was no connection. There was isolation. There was rations. You know, you had to survive on, you know, a couple of rations of bacon a week and one egg and a handful of flour, and they may do. And, you know, we're still very lucky. And like you said, we appreciate the things and the easeability of going through a drive-through to just get some food. Not that that's a great approach to take, but those things matter now, because, you know, there are times where, you know, people can't get to the essentials or their daily activities or yoga or going to the gym. So we take that for granted when it's just very easy, you know.
I've just realized how much, you know, we can take from our, you know, previous generations. Like, I'm just thinking now about my grandparents. Something's just occurred to me. Like, she is so frugal, my grandmother. Like, she will reuse Glad bags, like plastic bags. She will take the Glad wrap off meat packages and wash them and hang them on the line and reuse them.
Yep. My grandparents are the same. I was sharing the same story the other day. The cereal, the Special K cereal packets, the plastic stuff that comes in it, my grandparents will cut it open, wash it, hang it on the line, and then that'll become the lining to separate the schnitzel or the meat that they put in the freezer, so it doesn't stick. You know, like,
this is crazy.
This is what I grew up with. I thought everyone did this stuff.
I thought I was like the only one.
Wash foil and reuse it, and you know, there's a common joke in the Italian culture where it's like, you get to your grandparents' house and you're like, awesome, I'm gonna have some bread with some butter, and you go open the butter and it's got like olives in it. And you're like, oh, there's no butter. You know, it's got olives in it from last season.
Or the kids go to the freezer and see ice cream containers everywhere. Like, oh, ice cream, and there's no ice cream.
No. It would probably be you know, grilled peppers or something.
Yeah. My grandmother even cooks, you know, pre-made meals and freezes them. You just don't. But everything's labeled. You know, everything's labeled.
Yeah. And you know, and so those things, and you know, and we have this big movement of plastic reduction, and you know, I think all systems are really being questioned at the moment: health, well-being, you know, food, nutrition, soil health, like everything, and everything should be questioned. And you know, that's my nature. I'm a curious creature. You know, you know, I would always break toys when I was younger to see how they would work. I need to know why and how. You know, family would stop buying me toys because they're like, Ray breaks everything. And now it's been my, you know, I can solve problems because I know how things work. And I love being curious and breaking things apart. And I do that with everything, the, you know, banking system, the government system. I'm not an expert, but I know enough to kind of go, I'm going to make a conscious decision of how I play this game or how I play this decision, you know. You know, who's funding the research, and why is this being said this time and this was said last time, you know, just being curious and doing your own research and exploring it, and knowing that you've made the best decision from your point of knowledge, not because someone said you should and this is the way it is, you know.
Yeah, we could all certainly be a bit more curious. It's amazing what just being curious does. You know, people actually start to listen.
Yep. And you know, when there's a need to learn something, I call it just-in-time learning. When it's like, if I, you know, I've got access to some land, and you know, like when I needed to build a fence, I learned how to build a fence. I went on YouTube, I went onto websites, I saw how people twist the wire and what tools they needed, and I learned how to build a fence. I didn't need to go to uni or do a course about fence making or do a trade or be an apprentice. I just in time learned things, and that's kind of how I've gotten my way through different businesses and careers, is just being curious and understanding how it works. And then because I want to know how it works, the retention is much higher because it's within, not externally forced, you know.
And so, Ray, just on that, you know, on that incredible journey you speak of, you having been on, what would you say to people out there watching? You know, people are uncertain at the moment. I'm looking at, you know, like some of my younger sisters, she's sort of just floating along. You know, really people are unsure, but yet there is this massive opportunity there to readdress, you know, what you're up to with yourself. What would you say to people out there at the moment who are just sort of a bit sort of unsure and wondering what they're up to?
I kind of live by the fact that everything happens for a reason, whether it be bad or good. I honestly believe that this is a time where a lot of innovation will come from. It has been, if you look back in history, and there is a saying of history repeats itself. There are times of crisis where a lot of opportunity happens, transfer of wealth may happen, ownership of things may change, systems will break down and rebuild themselves. I think it's just persistence and being around like-minded people. The power of association is very, very important. And I think, being around like-minded, with the use of Facebook communities and meetup groups or anything in between, even, just any way of getting around a community of like-minded people is really going to be what sees us through moments like this. Being around the Farming Secrets Network and other regen farmers and people who are in this space has been very uplifting and inspiring. I can only come here and speak what I know today because I've associated with all these other individuals and kind of collectively absorbed their information. But, I always want to be the most stupidest person in a room. I think that if you're the most smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So getting communities where you're learning new things, feel vulnerable, feel stupid if that's what you need to feel inadequate, so that way you can learn from these greats that have been before you, and become more, fill your own cup, look after yourself. It's the whole oxygen mask analogy in an airplane. Like, without your own mask on, you can't help others. So you fill up your own cup. And I say this as advice for other people, but I assure you I need this advice as well, because I'm someone who kind of helps others before helping myself. And I think these are moments where you kind of have to slow down and stop. And we are in our own homes now, and there's not really much we can do out there. So it is that time to just self-reflect, slow down, learn the art of delayed gratification, pick up a new skill, learn a new habit, pick up coloring in, draw. I see all of these people on Instagram doing all these things they never thought they would do, and it might be baking, it might be coloring in, it might be knitting. Find a new hobby and a new passion that allows you to just, get into a flow and be with yourself, be comfortable with silence, be comfortable with your own thoughts, and just slow down and appreciate that. Listen to your breathing. I don't know, like those simple things that people would do all day because they weren't busy hustling. This used to be life. Wake up, move the cow, sit under a tree, look at the view. That was a hard day's work. Now we got to hustle, do this, to-do list, left, right, and center. Like, maybe this is a time for us just to slow down and be with ourselves and just be grateful and appreciate, what we do have and those around us, and self-reflect.
Yeah, I think it's crazy to consider the amount of people who are frightened of just sitting with themselves in silence. And I know a few of them from in my family and certain circles, as I know people that, and I was one of them, was just always so busy, busy, and I couldn't bear to sit with myself. And it probably took, like through the separation of my marriage and then readdressing what I was up to in my life and giving up smoking cannabis to sleep at night, I certainly had to learn how to be with myself, because all those things were just there to avoid just sitting with myself, being fully vulnerable and okay with what feelings and thoughts were there. And it's a massive learning curve, and you discover a whole lot. Like you discover certain limitations you've had. You discover that in most things, in most cases in life, is really we are at the source of everything, good and bad. And it's certainly a good time as any just to stop. You often sort of get too busy, looking at where you need to go. You sort of miss out on the cool things along the way, and sometimes it's those little things that teach us the most.
Yep, 100%. And I'm guilty. I had long to-do lists. I hustled. Sleep to me was the least important thing to do. It's like, sleep, you do that when you're dead. Now I feel ashamed that I would say things like that, because without it, you will become dead, and it's like I was all in on that hustle and grind and 18-hour days, and the more you do, the more you'll have. And sit there and realize, like, what for? And that's, I don't know how to verbalize it, but it is definitely a journey that you need to go through. And so many people, and I was one of them, that was chasing the destination but not enjoying the journey. It's like, all right, I'm at the peak, but I missed all the wonderful things on the way to the top of the mountain.
No, you get to the peak, man. You'll get to the peak and you'll be like, where's the next one?
Absolutely. You know me 100%. It's like, you get this goal and you're like, now what? Next goal, that's bigger. And it's like the satisfaction will never come. And the happiness would never be there. And I don't say that I do this well. Like, I still struggle with this. Like, I'm not coming from any space that I've mastered this, or I do hours of meditation, because I don't do any of that. I've just learned that, I would be on audiobooks at double speed, listening to 2 books a day to just cram as much information into my brain. And really, I wasn't listening to any of it because I was exhausted. I was tired. It's just like pretending to be busy.
Yeah. I read that book.
Yeah. Double speed. Didn't remember a word of it. And so it's those things that I've had to slow myself down with. And look, it's very hard for me to listen to an audiobook on single speed now, but I'll listen to it a couple of times. I'll make notes, or for me, I like to what I call learn out loud, which is learn something and then go make a live video or go write a blog article about it. And, I'm a bit more of a kinesthetic tinkerer type of learner. And so I got to learn something and then do it and apply it. And so that's just my learning style. But when you slow down and think, you do become very self-aware, and it's okay not to be great at things, and it's okay to not know things. That's, one of the other things that we struggle with is we go on Instagram and everyone's crushing life and everyone's living their best life and everyone has everything that they've always dreamt of. But there's a hidden truth behind that. And, and like, imagine a world where everyone was perfectly good at everything. It's just like, that would be such a boring place to live at. Know that my strengths might be your weaknesses or shortfalls, and your shortfalls are your strengths and my shortfalls. And together, we can collaborate and make some really amazing stuff happen. And that's why asking for help should be seen as a way of strength, not weakness,
sure.
And letting your guard down. I say to everyone, I can't copyright. There will be spelling errors in the emails I send you. I'm just not good at spelling. My handwriting is horrible. Call out the elephant in the room and say, I will send email. All my clients I work with, I say, if you get me to write copy, there will be spelling errors. If you're okay with that, we proceed. And they can never call me out on it. I don't have that nervousness of having to put it through Grammarly and check it and getting 3 people to read it. Now I just write and send. And if there's spelling errors, if you can correct me, you know what I meant.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there, man. Check this out. When I designed my business card, I got a deal and got 1,500 of them made, and there's a spelling mistake.
Awesome. You nailed it. You know why? Because you published it.
Yeah. And so what I do now, when I hand out a card, I say, there's a spelling mistake on there. Let me know when you find it.
Yeah, that's great. And if you do find it, you've got too much time. You should be doing something else.
Yeah. Ray, look, man, I want to thank you for your time coming on here today. And I know you've got some cool things in the pipeline with Farming Secrets. And if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get in contact with yourself, or even Hugh and Helen at Farming Secrets?
Yeah, so the best place to go to is farmingsecrets.com. There's blog articles. There's, follow the links to our YouTube channel. There's heaps of free videos and information there. We have a couple of guides on our website as well that you can download. And the best place is just on our website to view all that. We've also got a list of experts that we've worked with in the past, and that's a growing list of experts, because we're not the know all of everything, but we just know who to point you to or where to go when you're stuck with a certain problem. And then we also have an online community and a whole library of information, and that's for our paid members. And there's all that information on our website. And that's what we've been working really hard on fixing. And when I say fixing, I mean it more from a place of making it a better user experience for people and making it easier for things to be found and discovered. With the sheer volume of videos and content that's up there, it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So we've been working on that, and we'll continue to improve that. And then we've got books and resources and DVDs you can buy. there's actually a lot on there, and it's very informative, and a place where you can just really learn and discover new ways of thinking, and new way, beyond 2020, what that will look like for you. And everything that you do matters. If it's just reading a blog article, if it's just engaging in a Facebook post, if it's watching a YouTube video, if it's getting out in the garden and turning some soil and planting something, or if you're an ag farmer and you question the inputs you're putting in. And with the climate we're in now, there's chemical shortages everywhere. And so a lot of farmers are looking at other ways to farm. The timing is now, and what you're doing does matter.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right, Ray. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time today, man. All the way from over the other side of the ditch. And
that's okay.
I can only look forward to how things progress for you guys in Farming Secrets, and possibly having a catch up in person one day would be pretty cool. I'm looking at coming over the ditch. Well, who knows now, but soon anyway. And it'd be certainly cool to hang out and catch up in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to do that, and love what you're doing as well. And keep publishing podcasts, the videos, the YouTube, the Hangouts, and the impact that you're making. And that's how we discovered each other, is on Facebook and sharing stuff and going, me too, and yes, that's amazing. And that's being around the like-minded people.
Your grandmother does that too.
Oh my God, we're not crazy.
All right, man. You take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Jono. You take care too. Cheers.